Hi, it's Jamie from Evolution 5. In today's video, we're going to talk about the Building Safety Regulator, but specifically high-risk buildings. But before we do, let's have a quick introduction into who is the Building Safety Regulator. So the Building Safety Regulator, shortened as BSR, is a regulatory body that's been set up via the HSE to oversee the safety of high-risk buildings. Their function is to oversee the building control function in respect of design, construction and safety. The BSR focus, as we've said, is on high-risk buildings. High-risk buildings are considered those over 7 stories or 18 metres in height, as well as residential apartments, care homes and hospitals are also considered HRBs. The Building Safety Regulator came in force in October 2023 and it marked a significant implementation of the Building Safety Act 2022. However, since the implementation of the BSR, construction projects have become delayed, have seen increased costs as well as causing significant frustration within the construction industry, as well as projects actually being postponed and actually cancelled. So let's look at some of those challenges that we face with the BSR approval process, as well as a few solutions that you can carry out to make the application process and the whole BSR experience much smoother. So let's start with some of the challenges. So one of the biggest problems that the Building Safety Regulator faces is the backlog of applications, particularly the Gateway 2. This is pretty much down to 2 aspects. One, of course, the Building Safety Regulator is obviously a new body and it has a lot of applications for existing and new projects. So it's clearly under-resourced, but also we saw it with the introduction of the Building Safety Act and the Building Safety Regulator, a lot of private firms working in the building control function leave the marketplace. The other problem we obviously face, as you can appreciate with the backlog, is as a few applications are being approved or dealt with, there are actually more filling in at the bottom. So the problem is actually getting worse, not better at this moment in time. The approval process for existing HRB applications should take around about 8 weeks. And for new HRB applications, it's 12 weeks. However, on our projects, cladding remediation projects specifically in relation to HRBs, our applications are taken in excess of 30 weeks. Not on all of them, but on most of them. So what we're advising our clients now, specifically at the beginning of a project when we're putting together the project programme, is to allow for around about 26 weeks approval process, which, as you can see, is far in excess of the periods allocated for the Building Safety Regulator. And we've also heard of projects that are well in excess of 40 weeks without an approval. Another key frustration and challenge faced when dealing with the Building Safety Regulator is the lack of dialogue from the Building Safety Regulator. And it also appears in our experience and in the experience of other colleagues that we work with that it's one-way communication. So your application goes in. So unless you actually get a query from the Building Safety Regulator, there's no dialogue whatsoever. I've also heard, well, I say also heard, it's actually happened on one of our projects, is when you do get a communication or a request for extension of time, if you grant that extension of time or deal with it, you actually get charged for dealing with the extension of time. So there's a real issue, not just in the delay to the project, but also understanding those delays and having good communication with the Building Safety Regulator. So another challenge faced with the BSR approval process happens at the validation stage. We hear there's a high percentage of applications being rejected at the validation stage, and that's somewhat quite surprising given that the validation stage is all around making sure that the correct documents required for the application have actually been submitted and are part of the application. So there's a bit of a concern there at that validation stage. However, it's not all to do with the Building Safety Regulator. It's not all down to them. Many people are still not actually understanding the process. The industry isn't really brought itself up to speed with, what documents should be submitted, when they should be submitted. So it's not all down to the BSR, but collectively together, the BSR and the construction industry have obviously got to solve this problem. So let's look at 5 things that you can do when submitting your application to the Building Safety Regulator. Number 1, preparation is key. Make sure that your consultants or you are fully aware and know the requirements for the application, i.e. the information to be submitted. Make sure the information is clear, well labelled, plans and layouts, technical reports. Make sure you've got competency evidence for your consultants and personnel, and make sure that compliance statements are in there and well written and well considered. Tip 2, focus on clarity and accuracy. For example, when doing compliance statements against each building regulation, state how you've met the regulation, referring back to standard and codes. Tip 3, maybe an obvious one, manage your application. Make sure your application is submitted before the works commence. If there's any requests from the Building Safety Regulator for additional information or technical queries, make sure these are responded to promptly and clearly. And lastly, if you are given the opportunity, which we've talked about previously, you may not, if there is opportunity for dialogue and communication with the Building Safety Regulator, make sure you do so throughout the process. Tip 4, ensure that the key personnel are in place, as in addition to the design and consultant team. So make sure that the principal accountable person is identified for the purpose of the application process, and also your principal designer for the purpose of the building regulations. So just make sure that the key people involved in the project and the application process specifically are in place. And lastly, tip 5, make sure that the design is robust and within your budget, because changes later are a lot difficult to deal with. Major changes have to go back to the Building Safety Regulator through the change control process, and even minor changes are notifiable to the Building Safety Regulator. So do make sure that the design and is within the cost and the budget and everything's been checked off before making the submission, because you may incur further delays further down the line. So there are tips. I hope you have found value in this video. I hope there's some value in there with regards to your application to the Building Safety Regulator, and hopefully there's some tips in there to make sure that your application goes smoothly.